You know her, you love her. That is so appropriate, too, in a way. Wild Ride from Emma Hill, who is here in the studio with me. Emma, it is so great to see you. I know you are so busy, and I super appreciate you making some time to be with us today.
Oh, my goodness, Cece, of course. I really appreciate you having me on.
You know, because we need to connect with you in this way. That's the beauty of live radio, right? I mean, we have the phone lines that will be open here in just a few minutes, 907-222-1061. But there's nothing quite like this moment. And for me, I saw you last week and I was like, I want to honor you and Mackenzie and shine a light on what this has been like for you, how you're dealing with the tenderness of loss, because that's what this is, you know, when you pour your heart and soul into anything. And then to talk about perhaps what you know is on the horizon, at least that you can see, even if it's just things happening this month. So
yeah, absolutely.
Let's start with Mackenzie. Mackenzie Bibbs, how do you guys know each other?
So Mackenzie, and anyone that knows them knows that she loves to go by Mac. Mac is a wonderful human and is about 6 years younger than me. And we had met through circles kind of throughout the music scene, actually, kind of prior, but not like we never really knew like each other well, just kind of knew of each other and had met and kind of in passing. She had done some work with Showdown Productions, and she had done some work doing kind of promotion and different like elements of event production with them. So I'd seen her around, and it really wasn't, the connection started right kind of towards the beginning of COVID times. You know, like all of us, I was brought to a standstill, and for me it was a real smack in the face. I had just come off of a really intense and wonderful European tour and a really special trip where my sweetheart and I got to go and travel around the U.S. visiting all these national parks. It was the trip that ended up inspiring my record, Park Songs. So I was coming from all this travel, and then I was so excited to come home. But then, of course, it was, whoa, I'm home and I'm isolated. And I had canceled 6 months worth of gigs coming up, which I was really, you know, depending on to kind of recoup the luxury of getting to go and take that much needed time off to explore. So Mac, I noticed, was doing some vintage curation, and at the time, she worked at Uncle Leroy's, and so she was having some little pop-up things there. Not even like true pop-up. She just kind of had like a cute little kind of like little rack and a couple things that she was curating while she was also doing barista and managing work there. And I just thought that was really cool. And I've always been drawn to vintage, both home decor and fashion. It's all, you know, I've always thrifted the majority of my clothing. Even as a high schooler, I just really loved the idea of finding old things with stories and piecing them together. I've always really considered fashion I've been less interested in high fashion, but more interested in the idea of how clothing is an artistic expression of oneself, and using clothing to be an extension of however you're feeling that day, or even the opposite of maybe tricking yourself into feeling a different way than you woke up feeling that day. So we ended up just kind of bonding over the internet a little bit about what she was doing. I had kind of started piecing through some old stuff of mine that my dad found in his crawl space from when I was like 13. And so it just was this fun journey of me being like, look at these crazy platform shoes of mine from when I was 13. And, you know, a few different people going, oh, those are worth a lot of money now. That's like all the rage. And I'm like, what are you, you know? So just kind of delving into this idea of having fun, learning about vintage curation, kind of what was trending at the moment, realizing it was kind of my middle school and high school era, which of course I was very familiar with. And thrifting was one of the few things that I felt safe. I could mask up and I could go and do, they were open, and I could go and put headphones in and look for these things in a time when, you know, getting out of the house was really difficult.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where that part started. And then she just reached out to me a few months later and was like, I got invited to do my first big vintage market. I'm a little overwhelmed. Can I tap you in? Do you want to share a booth with me? And I was like, I've never done a market. And she's like, yeah, but you've done shows and all these, like, you have no problem, you know, curating a thing. And I was like, you're right. So.
And where was that market?
That was actually at one of the first Alaska vintage markets out at the fairgrounds. This would have been May of 2021. And we ended up working our butts off. We only had like a 2-week notice because she had kind of gotten like a fill-in slot. And, we ended up just having such an amazing weekend out there, both successfully as far as sales, but also we just had fun. We had fun. We got to know each other. We worked really well. And so over the next like year from that point, we ended up hosting several markets together and doing some pop-ups at other people's markets where we shared a booth. And we just ended up being a really good team. And we became very fast friends.
In those early days, did your role as a businesswoman within your music, were you able to transfer some of those skills and experiences into this idea that was happening?
I mean, yes, absolutely. You also have to remember, I'm from a small business family. And so I think that I've always had a little bit. So, some artists go, since way back when we're like, how do you know the business side of this? Whereas a lot of artists kind of struggle with that part of it. That part always, it's not the fun part, but it came a little easier to me. But I've been working for my family business since I was like 9.
Wow.
So, understanding just basic things of, cogs and kind of understanding a certain amount of, I've learned tons since. That's interesting. The things that kind of came naturally to me were a bit more on like the customer service, face-to-face side, getting people excited about stuff, selling stuff. That's always come naturally to me because of working in my parents' store from the time that I was 9 years old. The other things that I've learned so much since adding the vintage curation side of things is, definitely much more about like the social media side, marketing, trying to keep up with certain trending elements, things that I just didn't really think about, but have been so neat. I love learning. So
absolutely.
And Mac has so much knowledge. She has a degree in business and marketing. And so she has taught me, we've just taught each other so many things, both about business, about life, about, the things that when you become that intertwined so quickly.
Partnership.
Yeah, that partnership of just being like, I'm going to fill in any gaps I can, and I'm going to try to equip you with how to deal with them on your own, which I think is such a beautiful thing about getting to know someone that well, because it's symbiotic, and it's reciprocal. It goes both ways.
Yeah. So when you made this leap from pop-ups to brick and mortar, as they say, what was that inspired or crazy moment where you guys thought, should we do this? Should we go from this to this?
Well, since becoming friends with Mac, we like to tease that Mac comes up with these crazy ideas, and I either shut them down because I'm trying to like reel us in, or I will do just about anything to help realize those dreams. And the brick and mortar was that. She had been thinking about it for a while. It was a dream of hers. She also is from the coffee world. So I think in her mind, she wanted this third space, this like little spot. Folks could come in, have a cup of coffee, dress up. And I liked that part of it. That was kind of what I leaned into, because I was doing a lot of online sales before I ever started doing actual pop-ups with her. And so that's kind of where I had kind of gotten into the swing of that, of like, cool, I source, I list, I do my little, 3 times a week, I go and do my drop-offs at the post office and all of that. But it was really when we started meeting with some other like-minded folks who were also doing some vintage curation, but were also kind of very much embedded in this idea of a spot for community gather. That was when I was kind of like, I didn't think I wanted this, but I can at least I can see these talks through with you. I will lend my brain to the brainstorming. I will lend my time to the planning. I will help with the, everything from just like writing things out, talking numbers, looking at all these things. And I think I really just at first wanted to be a cheerleader, and then maybe like participate as a vendor, as a seller in this space. It wasn't until we actually looked at the space here at 3400 that I actually was kind of like, I might be intrigued to a point of being willing to take some ownership of this.
In the beginning, when clearly you guys were very focused on vintage, right? Clothing, accessories, etc. Was it also part of that initial inspired idea to create community space? Because I know that's something that has become very important, not just for you, but for the people who feel safe coming into that space. But I'm just curious, was that part of the value and the idealism of what became this business?
Yeah, it's interesting. We just had no idea how far we were going to lean into it.
Okay.
I guess that's what I'm trying to say is I don't think I would have signed on to be an owner of this business if it hadn't been always original part of the plan for there to be. The original thing was a tiny little corner of the space, which when we saw this space, it was like, okay, this is big enough that we could still have this many vendors, this, many racks, this much display, but this back little corner with this little garage door, which I had already convinced to do the first time I saw it, we were doing the walkthrough, and I said, now, if that garage door had some windows on it and got some natural south light, I could see this space being something. And the guy made the mistake of saying in front of me, well, we could probably make that happen. I said, don't say that in front of me. I will hold that to you if we come to lease. And he goes, okay. And that's what happened. I said, hey, you said you could because for me, that little corner was something I had dreamed of for a long time, which was a living room in a public space that could be turned into just about any kind of venue that was thought of as a tiny, intimate gathering space. And that was I would not have signed on if I didn't. That was my big part of the vision. It's not that I didn't see other aspects.
Sure.
And I was very excited because a huge part of what Rage City was from the get-go is Mac and I got to do all these markets, both the ones that we hosted and the ones that we took place in. We met so many amazing, talented people. And that very quickly became friends and artists that we respected and curators and everything from makers to just people we wanted to lift up. We wanted to see them succeed. And a big reoccurring conversation that happened between a lot of us is that the market season is very short in Alaska. So many of us could never dream of having a brick and mortar on our own. And so Mac and I really, from the get-go, it was us reaching out to a handful of people we had met saying, what if we co-opted this to a certain extent? Not from a legal point of view, because that was going to be a nightmare and we had no startup capital. But what if in spirit, this was an umbrella space for as many micro and small businesses to operate out of as possible, which day one, we had 27 of us. And at the height of our 3 years, there was over 200 of us.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I bet you didn't know that part.
No,
yeah.
That's just remarkable. And again, and I know you and I haven't had a lot of time to talk about this thing I'm doing, the new design for living, but everything you're saying is without a doubt inside the new design model. Collaboration.
Yeah.
Lifting people up.
Absolutely.
Building community space. Making it safe and affordable for entertainment, not just for people to take it in and listen to it, but for people to perform it. So when you say 200, can you tell us what was the relationship you had with all of those individuals?
Yeah, I was responsible for, Mac and I took on the overhead of being the business operators, owners, and managers of the space. We did a ton of research and talked to some other phenomenal small local businesses that were on a consignment model to figure out what software they were using, what POS system they were using that was very specific to consignment, because we knew even with 27 in the beginning, that was going to be a ton to deal with. We wanted very much to make sure we had a system that was built with that in mind. And, we talked to folks down at Second Run. We talked to our friends over at Hoarding Marmot, different folks who used the POS that we ended up going with, which allowed us to grow to the point of having 200 plus vendors that we cared for, which helped us with the inventory management. It did so much of the math of, basically everything is coded in a way that every single sale that takes place, it goes to make sure that their proper percentage goes right into their account. I at any point can show every single thing of theirs that I've sold, what I owe them at any given point. And so it's hard to talk about this space because from a business point of view, what we were trying to do, which was be this larger space where a ton of small and micro businesses could thrive, that was an absolute success. I have zero regrets about that part. The reason we were closing our doors is because we're currently living in an economy that cannot and will not and is not built to support this kind of operation. Rage City was never cushioning large bits of money away because the idea was always to make as much money as possible for the vendors and artists, ourselves included. We also sold our things out of this and also paid a consignment fee to the larger business to keep the doors open. But, when people want to talk about numbers, I'm just I'm not going to leave this talking about, this failure. The failure is the system. The failure was not the business. I have no regrets. I was able to pay out to artists and makers and vendors and curators over less than 3 years, $450,000.
That's beautiful.
That's more than what the city of Anchorage has given in grants in the last 3 years to artists.
That's gorgeous. Congratulations. Now let's just take a moment. Let's just take a moment for that. That's huge.
Thank you.
That is not just success, it's love. That's love in action. That takes a consciousness and a heart of inclusivity and an understanding that when you lift yourself up and you lift another up, we all get lifted up.
Well, from the beginning, I told people, I said, my motto is, we win when we all win.
Yeah.
And I really do that in every avenue of my life. I really try to live that way. And you know me for a long time. That's how I've always approached the music scene. You know, I would hear these young punk bands or whatever coming up and being like, well, we're too cool. I'm like, no, here's the thing. I don't care if you're punk rock. I don't care if you're jazz. If you want to say that you're a member of this scene, you got to show up. You got to go to other shows, not just the ones you're on the bill. You got to go see the other people. You got to show support. You got to buy the ticket. You can't always get on the guest list. And sometimes if you're hurting, get on the guest list. But when you got a little money in your pocket, buy the ticket. That's how you keep any kind of scene alive and thriving. And I've seen us up and downs throughout this, but I've always reminded people there is nothing better than supporting people living the same dream as you, because that's how you exist within a scene that has space for you to thrive in.
And that is the new system. Okay. So in the new design model, that's the system. That's one of the systems that you're talking about right there. Because, just a few minutes ago, you talked about that the system is the failure, and as well as the economy reality. But can you go into a little bit more detail from your perspective about this system? And I mean, I think we have a sense of the larger system, but what have you learned in this journey of being a business owner about Alaska, and even more myopic, Anchorage?
Yeah. And, as someone who loves this city dearly, even at times, I always say I love the city dearly, even at times when it makes me very angry. But no, I have a deep love for this place. I wasn't born and raised here. I was raised out in the Upper Cusco, and then I went to high school in Palmer. But I have called Anchorage home, for my first year of college, and then I went away for 5 years. But since 2011, when I moved back, this has been my home. And I really, really am invested in honoring its past and trying to be very present in its all current situations. But I also have a lot of hope for its future, and I want to invest in that. So one of the things that's really difficult is that I have seen now over the couple decades that I've been very involved here is that the demographic of folks who have continued to show up again and again for the parts of Anchorage that I'm really embedded in, which of course is like the music and arts and culture scene, specifically stuff that's organic and grassroots. I've also been a longtime advocate for mental health and the way that overlaps with art. And I'm also a longtime advocate for all ages spaces, because again, when you talk about what a scene and what the ecosystem of a scene looks like, you cannot envision a future of a scene if you are not lifting up the next generation of said scene. And if we don't create spaces where these younger, or maybe they're not even younger, they're just new to this craft or new to their willingness to be vulnerable, they're new to their artistic expression. If we don't have spaces for them to be a little bad, they're not going to have spaces to be encouraged to get better. They're not going to have spaces where they feel safe enough to be where they are in their journey right now, so that they can be inspired to continue to grow. And that's in all aspects of life. But for me, of course, I've really honed in on, because I do think that one of the keys to a larger system, and I'm talking about, when we're talking about new systems, a system where we celebrate vulnerability in everyone, not just artists, in everyone. The idea, and that was so embedded in what we've done at Rage City, is when you walk in that door, I want you to immediately feel seen. I want you to feel safe, and I want you to feel welcome. And that, yes, can be done in so many ways. It's, are you looking for a particular thing? Can I help you find that thing? How are you doing today? And really meaning it, sitting there and listening to the response, and then responding in a way that maybe I can make that a little better if you're having a hard one, or you're nervous about this thing, or you heard there was an open mic, but you've never sang in front of anyone before, or you want to just sit here and you're not really in a spot that you can talk to other people, but you just don't want to be alone. Great. We've got coffee table books. Go sit over there. You are more than welcome. Let me know if I can help in any way. Those are the spaces that I want to see, because in a system and Anchorage, the folks that support those spaces are the folks that need those spaces. What we need next is for the folks that maybe are at a different part of their journey to financially and energetically support those spaces.
100%.
Because I don't know what your background was, and maybe you're doing great right now. And I love that for you. I love that you were in a place of prosperity. I love that you were in a place of success, whatever that looks like for you. But if you want to live in a place that you feel like is cool and exciting and full of art and full of culture, you have to look back to where you came from and look at the gaps within our town and go, how can I support those that are not where I am yet?
That kind of a question, though, Emma, comes from a consciousness shift. Like, there has to be some willingness to ask the question, which oftentimes comes from either an experience or from an awakened consciousness, where suddenly you're not just living all for yourself. You're looking up and looking out at the greater community. You have a relationship to the whole, and you're understanding that what you support is important, where your dollars go is important. That's why in the new design model, it's all about local. We don't care if something's $1 more over here than over here. We understand the blood, sweat, and tears, the heart, the time that goes into creating a business in whatever form it shows up. And we have a responsibility by choice, because it's joyful to go and support what is local. So that, to me, is part of what's necessary for that system shift to happen in the greater population.
Well, I mean, and all of this comes back to, I'm not going to take it to a place of politics, but I think it's important when you think of the way that people feel engaged within their community. So often people think about, especially in Alaska, you hear it again and again, oh, my vote doesn't count, my vote doesn't count. Well, every single day you have the opportunity to vote with your dollars. You choose where you spend, and when you spend local, the majority of that money actually stays in your community.
Yes.
So right now, the conversation it's a really interesting one to have gone on the radio and talked to these different newscasters over the last couple of weeks about the economy, and then to read some of these comments and people going, "You're lying. The economy's fine. Look at the stock market." Well, here's the deal. There are people that are lucky enough to have equity and have things that finance that exists inside of a stock market. There is a large amount of people that do not and may not ever know what that feels like. Their economy is failing them. Mm-hmm. They were already living so day to day and paycheck to paycheck, and they are now expected to do that with rising costs, less wages, less work opportunities, because it's just there's so much happening that if you're not living in it, I can see how it would be very hard to understand. But I run and operate a business that my main demographic, they never had a lot of extra to spend, but they came in and showed up for us anyhow because they appreciated the other things that we did. We held community events multiple times a week that were free or donation based. And we did a lot of work in that space to try to make up the difference in order to do that. Because the difference was a lot of those people would not have been able to come to our events if there had been a ticket price on it. Then there are the ones that we do charge tickets, like my Spinard Song Circle. That's something I started in 2017. It's a $20 ticket, and that goes specifically to paying the artists that I have on that. And it never, ever covers the way that it is built. Like, it is meant to be a small show. That show will never cover what I actually pay my artists, because I believe in paying a very fair wage. But it goes towards helping that.
But you're also creating the system. You see, you're teaching people, I'm willing to pay for this ticket because I understand how the money is being circulated. And I really respect that, because it is part of that, what I would say the law of reciprocity.
Yes.
You have to be a part of it. And there's a feeling of, I don't know, at least for me, I would imagine you as well, like you feel good because you know what's going to happen with that $20. It's going to make a difference. And there's an acknowledgement too, because anytime I've done a gig, even if it's $20, I will always pay the artists because it's an important gesture of acknowledgement.
Yes.
Ideally, the amount, we try to make it the most that we can. However, it's the acknowledgement and the gesture that has its own currency.
Absolutely. So one of the things that was huge, so I ended up incorporating officially Spinard Song Circle into a 501c3 nonprofit in August of 2024.
Okay.
And the biggest reason of me wanting to be able to do that is I was feeling, I'd had this show since 2017 monthly where it was always me and two special guests. And I always paid them whatever I could, depending on how many tickets we sold. Because at the beginning, that's all it was. It was a monthly show. I didn't have any capital. I didn't have anything. I just would put up the show, pay the rent, the space. And then literally once I paid that fee, everything that went over, I paid my two artists with. And so if I had a really great show, I could pay them really, really well. If I had a low attendance show, I would try to I have a bare minimum. I pay them even if it was out of my own pocket, right? Like you said, that idea of respect and respecting time. But I got to a point where I felt really not okay about having to see how the sales went as to see how much I was able to pay my artists, even though that's a very normal thing. That's like a pretty like age old, but as a touring musician of myself for, 17 plus years, I was like, that's really bummer, because especially what I'm trying to do with Song Circle is create space for folks who are more up and coming. They don't have the same following as maybe myself or the Melissa Mitchells of Anchorage are going to have, but they have just as much right to be in front of a listening, paying audience to see what that feels like, the way that their art is experienced, the way that the energy feels like when you're in a room where you are transferring energy out and they are soaking it in and then giving it back to you processed through their heart and soul. And I think every artist, especially songwriters, lyrically focused storytelling songwriters, which again, it's not just folk artists. Anyway, I mean, I've been lucky enough to have, I have Abby Sparkman from the Sundogs come in, do these stripped down so you can hear these lyrics, you're hearing the stories behind the songs. I love every version of Abby. I love, when she's rocking and she's in the zone and she's on stage and the lights are on, because that is so what her soul, talk about somebody in our scene who is just like from a different time that's been transplanted to us. How lucky are we? But I also love that I get to like push her boundaries and be like, hey, I know it's going to feel weird. You don't have your bandmates. You're going to have 50 people silently listening to every single breath and word. But I swear it will change you as a person, as an artist. It will change you. And so I think there's a ton of value in it. And so part of the becoming a nonprofit was I was able to then write grants, get supplemental funding. And now every time I have an artist come in, I go, you're going to get paid $300. Whether there's 2 people that show up and get a ticket or 100 people that get a ticket, I'm going to write you that check and I will figure out the rest later. And that was a huge shift for me to be able to do that, because that's the thing, both as an artist and a show producer and as a nonprofit founder and all the things that go in, and the community builder and all the things, the roles that I play and the hats that I wear, is making sure that folks know their value and to move forward in whatever capacity they go, to know that they deserve, wherever they are in their journey, to be paid for their time, to be heard, to be seen, and to be valued.
Yeah, this is just so beautiful. Emma Hill is my guest. We're talking about so many important things. She and her business partner, Mackenzie Tubbs, will be closing their doors. And I wanted to give her some time, Rage City Vintage, the name of the shop, and I wanted to give Emma some time to just empty her heart and share things maybe that she hasn't yet had a chance to share. And it's going into areas of discussion that are so meaningful to me. And you and I share all of these values and ideals, because that's the whole point of the new design model. The old system, it's over.
Yeah.
Okay. It's crushing its own self from the weight of its outdatedness.
Yeah.
We don't want it anymore. And I just want to acknowledge that what you have been doing is so incredible. And I'm sorry it did not have the type of business success that we obviously get into business to experience. And I will continue to always tell you, and I will tell Mackenzie whenever I meet her, that the currency that you're speaking about right now is incredible. It's incredible. And for the people that you created this, because when you were talking earlier about giving people a chance to have that first time to perform, that's the vulnerability that your safe space held for them.
Yeah.
That you could make a mistake and still be loved. You could, forget a word or whatever at that moment, or just never have the experience of yourself singing your heart out in front of a group of people.
Yeah.
And what have been some of the responses people have given you in light of all of this?
Oh my gosh. I mean, in the last couple of weeks, I'm going to try not to get emotional. We've just had folks come up and try to express to us, which has been, of course, really hard, because Mac and I feel an incredible responsibility, and it was not at all an easy decision to close these doors. It's a really tough thing when you feel all the magic is cooking and you just cannot make the finances make sense. And when it's just 2 people that also need to be able to pay our bills and have health insurance. And, we basically, from a business standpoint, there are so many elements about our store that many people would look at and go, oh, well, this was never going to make sense. Well, from a business point of view, in the old system, sure, right? And who knows? Maybe if we were been smarter, maybe we would have started as a nonprofit. Who knows? I can't go back. I can't go back. But what I do know is we we're very successful with what we wanted to do, both with supporting small and micro businesses, but also creating this space. So that part is a success. It's just not, it's a sustainable model when an economy is thriving. It is not a sustainable model when the folks that are like-minded, like you and I, that share these ideals, when the majority of those people do not have extra money to spend right now. And I cannot hold that against them. We talked earlier about the power of $20. I've been having this conversation a lot. So those of us that are, that live in a gig economy or kind of, have always been a little bit on what we think of the fringe as far as, the normie jobs or the 9-to-5s or whatever, we kind of, we hustle, we do all these side things and we make it work because we're creatives and we're probably pretty neurospicy and have a hard time, holding down a normal job or whatever it is. We basically keep our part of this of society alive by giving $20 back and forth to each other over and over and over again. Wow. And that sounds really sad, but it's actually beautiful. It's the way that a huge majority of us have food on our table. It's a way of a huge majority of us have got to realize some of our dreams, have gotten to build our little lives, even though maybe they're not as luxurious as others, but very full of love and community. And support this idea of when someone that $20 means a lot to them, chooses to show up and pay that for a ticket or come and buy a pair of earrings or come and buy a piece of artwork. And I go to a market and I love this artist and I say, I wish that I had more, but I'm going to buy these stickers because it's a small way that I can own some of your beautiful artwork and look at it every day and go, I love this person. I love what they do. And one day maybe I'll be in a different place and I will, and it's like, I think about it. I've gotten to take that journey a little bit. I've been lucky enough to be like, go from a person that maybe could afford a couple stickers to now, I have a house with some of my favorite local artists, some of their art on my walls that I've been fortunate enough to get to buy from them. These are the things we have to think about all the time. It's not sometimes it's not just at the holidays. It goes, if you want something if you like living in a town that is full of artists and makers and events and concerts and plays and all of these things, you have to support that being the kind of town every single day that you exist within it. And that doesn't always even mean the physical or showing up with the $20. It's talking about them. It's saying, regularly bringing into your conversation, oh man, when's the last time you went to Gather? When's the last time you went out and saw a really great concert? When was the last time you got tickets to Parlor in the Round? The last one was so amazing. I really hope you get to experience it sometime. These conversations, and maybe, some of us were so embedded, you're like, how could anyone not know what Parlor in the Round is? But we know. I go every month and Kevin asks, he goes, who here has never been to a Parlor in the Round? And a big chunk of people put their arm up and I go, this is crazy, y'all. This is season 11. How is it possible that you haven't heard of this? This is one of the coolest productions in our whole town. So it's like the way that you engage in everyday life and making sure that in some way you are incorporating the things and the people out there working their butts off to make cool things happen. Show them your love, even if it's not always with your dollar. But here's another thing that no one wants to talk about. Those of you that have extra dollars, you cannot just show up once a month. You cannot just show up around the holidays. Your town, your city needs you right now more than it has ever needed you. If you have money to spend, you should be daily going and finding a small local business and spending as much as you think you can get away with spending right now. People want to talk about a failing economy on this lower half. It's because you want to know what's happening right now. People are scared about what's going to happen with the economy. So people that have money are being told by their financial advisors or their grandmas or whatever it is, put your money away. Do not spend it. If you want to stay okay and not end up like that lower half of the population, you better put that money away. Well, guess what? When you don't spend that money, those of us on the bottom half don't get the tiny bits that trickle down that actually feed the rest of us all of the time. And that is what we are seeing right now. Those that have equity, those that own things are going to be fine. And the other side of, if you're not in that category, you are being failed epically by your community right now. And you are just wondering why no one is talking about it.
This is so great. This is so important. I am so honored to be listening to your the way you're expressing this is so important, because one of the things that Laura Odin was talking about last week was
Love Laura.
The loss of funding. She and you and me, like, appropriately holding anchorage, as a city, accountable as well for the loss of funding for people like her and yourself. So what do you want to say about that part of this ride with the business?
Well, yeah, I think that's when I've been having some of these conversations, it is how it, especially now that I'm learning so much in my, I'm about a year and a half into officially having a 501c3 nonprofit that I'm in charge of, right? Spin Art Song Circle. And we get to do so much more than just our monthly concerts. We host all ages open mics, all ages open jams. I work with Shane Russell, who facilitates songwriting workshops for folks of all levels, all ages. Everything we do is sober, so it's always in spaces where folks of all ages, mediums, talent levels, experience levels, everyone is welcome. It's just a community space to say, what does expressing yourself in this way look like, right? Well, I've had to learn so much about finding funding because I've had to personally write grants, so many grants over the last year and a half. And I've been really lucky to get some amazing funding through the Atwood Foundation, through Alaska State Council of the Arts, through Recover Alaska, because they've been so generous because of, again, everything we do is a sober space. And for folks in all different stages of their recovery, that's a really crucial thing to know that you can go and experience live music. You can go and be in a public space where there's not going to be alcohol around. So it's not even about temptation. It's not what the focus is, right? Which is a huge thing for me. Finding funding for this, I'm so fortunate, and I am not at all, I know that there are so many amazing nonprofits, and we're all just grasping and writing these grants and hoping that we get picked. And I don't want to sound not grateful, because I know there's some other nonprofits that say, well, I've been writing these same grants and I didn't get a single one, right? And I hate that for them because, like you said, there's this scarcity that's happening. But the idea that I should be doing just fine because people go, oh, well, didn't you get that grant from Atwood? I was like, that's about 3 months for me of if I'm paying all the artists fairly every month, if I'm paying Shane fairly, if I'm renting the space to do it, all these things, I'm not paying myself a salary, The funding is a scary part of the work. If you're doing good work, you are trying to hold space and stay true to your ideals and make sure that that's at the forefront of everything you do. You're also having to be, of course, even as a nonprofit, a business owner and looking at the numbers and going, how many months more can I support this? If I don't get a grant in March, it's crazy. People don't think of that part of it. And so when Anchorage and Alaska as a whole we're losing more and more of that funding that's coming from these different national avenues. It's just really sad because I don't know if the just day-to-day person realizes how many aspects of all of our life in Alaska is funded by national grants. Right. And I don't just mean artistic, from everything from our fish and game, our wildlife studies, our universities. We're seeing on a mass scale the loss of funding for the way that we live our life.
Yeah, and that is going to, by force, put us in a position where we're going to have to, as a society, as a population, the leaders, all of us, we're going to have to figure that out real soon.
Yeah.
Because it's coming. It's already here, as you've been explaining for the last half hour, right? Was there ever a moment, though, where you guys said, besides grant money, was there ever a moment when you thought, if only this existed here in Anchorage as far as funding goes?
Yeah, it's really interesting to me. I think the number one thing I learned is when you're first going and starting a business, there are some amazing resources, and I want to give them some shouts out because of very real help that I got through the Women's Business Initiative here in Alaska, and the Small Business Association, and also Alaska Community Land Trust. They helped us in multiple ways as far as offering some classes, some assistance at discounted rates for different business sides of things as we were learning, and literally everything as we went, for certain aspects. So amazing resources. And if you're out there and you're thinking of doing any kind of business, look up these resources because advice and education and community and support is there. And that's really special. What is not there, but everyone's going to tell you over and over again is, there's all these business grants.
Right.
No, there are not.
Yeah.
There are a handful of business grants and everyone wants them.
Yes.
And they're very complicated if they're at a national level. You have to have some really serious, basically legal team on your side to make sure that you are fully equipped to even apply for some of these grants, let alone qualify for them. So I guess what I would say is, yes, I do think it's a failing if we're talking about the old system. We deal with right now a place that does not incentivize large corporate level landlords to not have empty spaces. In fact, they still get a tax write-off. If you are able to charge market value for whatever space it is that you own and you usually rent, but then the economy is bad and everyone moves out, instead of landlords being incentivized to drop the prices and try to keep those spaces full, they are actually incentivized to say, oh, I'll just let it sit, I'll let it ride until the economy picks up a bit better, because they don't want to get locked into leases at lower rates. Well, guess what? They get to write that amount of money off that they've lost. In many cities, there is a government level of, I mean, you look at the housing crisis we're having right now. Do you know, when I lived in Fairview, which I lived in Fairview for 8 years, the amount of empty houses that were sitting there that were owned by either churches or large companies that were able to use those houses being empty. Of course, churches, they don't need to do it as a tax write-off. They're not paying taxes on those houses. But for other companies to use as write-offs as these project properties, well, if someone had just been able to actually get in there, because a bunch of them refused to sell them, if someone just, with a little bit of capital or a loan to go in and rehab some of these homes and turn it into a actually affordable rental space, we would not at all be dealing with the housing crisis that we're looking at. I watched it happening around me. For a little while, my husband and I, that was kind of what we were doing. We had a couple of properties. We would have bought up some of these said properties I'm talking about, not because we had a bunch of money, but because we kind of did the game of where we had a little bit of equity. We could have taken a really small, a loan out by paying a small, down payment and then creating a truly fair market value rental home. Nothing fancy, but a warm, roof over someone's head. Someone that we love that was having a hard, people that we love and know that were having hard times affording rent anywhere. And we had some conversations, and basically it became very clear to us that as long as the property taxes are paid, the city doesn't really care if those buildings sit empty. And that, to me, is a much bigger conversation. Yeah. But that is a scary thing to think about.
It is. And, I didn't really know. This is so important to me. and I hope you'll come back.
I will. I know. I have to go open the shop in 5 minutes.
I know. But,
come see me at Rage City Vintage. I'll be here until 6 tonight.
Yeah. So you and I will talk about continuing this conversation. But let's touch on two important things. Number one, tell us about the next Song Circle, where it is, how we can get tickets for that.
So our last day open at Rage City Vintage is Christmas Eve, December 24th. Between now and then, we are having our closeout sale, which everything today and Wednesday is going to continue to be half off. Starting on Thursday and Friday, we'll bump up to 75% off. Now, again, important thing, that is only on our secondhand items. We will not apply that discount code to our artists, to our makers, of whom there are still 50 plus that we are selling for. In fact, I highly recommend you come and do your holiday shopping, because we encourage them to bring us more inventory. My goal is to send everyone home with as little inventory as possible and as big a check as possible, literally on Christmas Day. So please help me do that. Support local, buy your gifts local, and also buy secondhand. We have amazing art and home decor and clothing and wonderful things, and you do not have to buy people new things. Our last events at this beautiful space is going to be, we have this Friday is the last Bernard Song Circle, not ever, but in Rage City Vintage, in this beloved home that we've had for the last couple of years. It is going to be this Friday the 19th from 6 to 9. That is with myself. As always, I always host and have two special guests. This month, it's with Kat Moore of The Forest That Never Sleeps and Tara Starlight. I'm so excited for that show, and we have a couple little special holiday treats up our sleeve. And then the final thing is on Sunday, Solstice the 21st, from 6 to 9, Shane Russell, my dear friend and colleague with Spinard Song Circle, he hosts and has hosted 2 times a month for the last 2.5 years in our space, and even more prior, what we call the Spinard Songwriters Circle, which is a workshop for songwriters of all levels to come together. And we are getting to showcase some of these beloved songwriters who have called Rage City home and met and become family in this space. They each are going to get like a little section of time to showcase some of their original work.
Beautiful. Oh, my gosh. Listen, know that you are loved.
Thank you.
On behalf of everybody, thank you and thank Mackenzie for having the guts and the courage to say yes to an inspired idea that benefited all of us. And I'm just knowing with you and for you both that the seeds that you have planted will return a harvest that is really going to be beautiful. I'm sure you've learned a ton of life lessons. If we had more time, we'd get into it. But I just really appreciate you coming on the show today, pulling back the curtain to the reality of this, allowing your heart to be tender, your own vulnerability, hopefully in a safe space with me. And let's go clear out that. Let's just go shopping at Rage City Vintage. Let's clear that store of everything, pay these beautiful artists, and give thanks to these two incredibly talented people.
And I guess I will just say, for moving forward, please follow anything Spinard Song Circle in all the ways. That's how you're going to be able to continue keeping up with me and what we are doing for our program, like our different programming.
Yes.
It will live on. We have stuff already lined up for January, but so just a lot of folks, I think, have not always made that differentiation between that. Spinard Song Circle will continue. A lot of my community programming, all of my musical programming will continue under that. Just not, unfortunately, in our beautiful, cozy, safe space of Rage City. But we are going to find and activate other spaces that are beautiful and share like-minded ideals in Spinard as well, and this beautiful city we call home. So
and please keep me in the loop. I'm here to shine a light on all of that.
Thank you so much, Cece.
Thank you so much, Emma Hill, my special guest today. This is the new design for living, reimagining how we live, love, and treat each other. Have a great day.